4B movement, which if you don't know what that is, go look it up and come back.
Don't worry, I've got you. The 4B movement over in South Korea is starting to get a lot of attention all over the world and the internet, so let's talk about it today. Like, what is it, where did it come from, and why is it becoming so popular all of a sudden? And why does some people believe it is one of the main factors contributing to the fact that South Korea has like one of the lowest fertility rates in the entire world right now? So yeah, I would argue that it's pretty effective, and now it's starting to garner attention over here in the West with all the women who are also fed up with dating. There have been a lot of feminist movements happening in the past 10, 20 years or so over in South Korea, as there has been all over the world, of course. But a new subsect of women in these feminist movements are starting a movement called the 4B movement, also known as the 4 No's, which is a group of women saying no to dating, child rearing, marriage, and relations of any kind with men, if you get what I'm saying. And from my research, the 4B movement actually originated from a larger movement called Escape the Corset in South Korea, which is interestingly similar to some behaviors we've been seeing over here in the West. But it's no secret that in South Korea, the patriarchy is very strong, right? And they have very strict beauty standards and things you're supposed to adhere to. A lot of women shared their stories about how they always felt like they had to have a certain amount of makeup every time they left the house. They had to look a certain way, act a certain way, fit in with society a certain way. They had to buy new clothes every season, and it was just exhausting, and they couldn't afford to keep up with it anymore. Does this sound familiar at all? But of course, naturally, they hit a breaking point, and they formed the Escape the Corset movement. And part of the protest was that women just started destroying makeup and clothes altogether. But a lot of women noticed, of course, things weren't getting better, and the issues stemmed way deeper than just physical appearance. Women started to notice things like South Korea ranks 99 out of all 146 countries for gender equality. That's really bad. And articles started coming out with surveys that were reporting that 65% of women in the whole country didn't even want kids, and 42% didn't want to get married at all. And 80% of the people said the reason for that was because domestic violence was so bad. And on top of the fact that things were getting so bad over there, the South Korean government wanted to shut down the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, which was the place that is supposed to be supporting women. And they started removing terms like gender equality from textbooks. They also noted, of course, that the gender pay gap was huge over there, and there was wild amounts of discrimination from anyone who did choose to become a mother, so why would you want to? So essentially, the women got tired of the men and the government treating them terribly and ignoring them, so they decided to take matters into their own hands and said, we've had enough, we're done. And so far, it's working really well. So now all the other feminist movements in countries where, laws are being overturned, such as here, are seeing that and going, oh, wait, maybe that's not the worst idea. And I haven't decided if I'm personally at this point entirely or not yet, although I've kind of been doing it for the past 25 years anyways. But I do think it's a very interesting thought to consider.
Brothers, everyday things are getting worse and worse. It's like modern women don't understand how they're being used by groups that only want women to be lonely for greater consumption of fast fashion and beauty products. But you might wonder who gives the most voice to this movement against men. Well, it's those with the rainbow flag, those with purple hair, many of whom dislike men because they are attracted to women. They want to eliminate their competition by bringing them to their side. But it's not just that. Now, they're even trying to convince married women with stable homes to end their relationships, saying that everything men do is minimal, that they should leave them and join the movement because they live with a patriarchal oppressor. Did you hear? 65% don't want children, 42% don't want to get married. They say that by 2030, 45% of women will be single. Friends, start selling cat food.
Funniest thing about the 4B movement is it always comes from women that look more masculine than the men that they're talking about. And you know the exact women I'm talking about that have like the septum piercings, the different color hair, that literally are so far in their masculine role that the men weren't even looking in their direction in the first place. But the other funny part about it is it's another perfect example of how so many women are desperate to constantly compete with men. And it's just another way that these women are trying to one-up men. But the irony is that men have already checked out of marriage. They don't want kids. They find women insufferable because women have literally made it impossible to make them happy. So men are over it. There's passport bros for a reason. But yet here come the women with their 4B movement trying to make an impact of something that the men are already doing, which is something historically women have done with jobs, with everything around them, trying to be mechanics, trying to do all the manly jobs or make more money and be boss babes. Everything is in competition with men. The same men that they claim not to give a shit about or that they don't need or yada, 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 that men are trash. But if there's so much trash, then why are you constantly competing with them or trying to one-up them or be better than them? And the other funny thing about it is that these women claim that they don't want male attention or male validation and they're so over men, but they create all of this drama and all of this chaos circulating around men, knowing well they're going to get attention from men. So make that make sense. It's honestly the hypocrisy for me. And these are the same women in comments like myself saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. But y'all have perpetuated drama so much to get male attention, because negative attention is still attention. And if women aren't seeking attention from men outside of creating all of this drama, then why are they still on OnlyFans? Why are there still so many single mothers? Well, guess what? Because there's always going to be women that are going to put themselves out there and put themselves in jeopardizing situations because they want to perpetually live in victimhood. And what's the alternative? That you become a lesbian where the divorce rates are higher and the domestic rates are higher in lesbian couples? So make that make sense. And the flip part about it is it's just another example of how women will set the standard of what they want, and when the men follow through even further or use women for something or another, they can turn around and flip it and be in their victimhood and be like, oh my God, all men are trash. And it just perpetuates the idea that all men are the same and all men are gross and disgusting, even though the men are following the same standard that the women set in the first place. Okay, bye.
It's like somewhere in society, someone has told them you have to be exactly like a man to get ahead in this world. Instead of studying the women who have done it a certain way, in their way, they feel like, oh, I've got to do it and I've got to play like this in this space, which I think a lot of times to a degree, yeah, you have to know the game that you're playing. But for you to then start comparing, say, for instance, the WNBA and the NBA, we should get this because of this, this, and this, merely because we are professionals. Right. I don't doubt that you could cross me up, that you could back me down, swish it in my face, all that other stuff. I don't doubt that you can skunk me in a game, right? But compared to professional athlete as a woman versus professional athlete as a man, we know that the men would smoke you. And so with that being said, that's why people go to see the men, is because the men are so much better. It's not that you're so much less. It's just that the men are superior because they're stronger and faster. I want to see a faster game. Does not mean I'm not going to support you. It just means, once again, the men are faster. And so I'm going to spend my money there. So you don't need to get mad at the men for them doing what they can do. There's other things that you're better at. You don't have to try to compete. Oh, he's a mechanic. I'm going to be a mechanic. I'm going to be the best mechanic ever. And ain't nobody going to tell me this, 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 and this. And now I'm going to go be something that's traditionally a man's job. Why? Why don't you just do what you're good at? Why don't you just create a lane and a space for you and stop talking about, oh, where there's no space for women over here? Because traditionally women are not good at the job. And so stop forcing it. But of course, society is going to ram it down the throats of women, modern women. No, you have to be exactly to a T like a man. And then when you get tired of it 10 years later, man, I didn't really have to be like a man. I spent all this time trying to compete with the men, and really I could have been myself and I could have done it this way. Yeah, that's what we were trying to tell you. So before you go down that 10-year long road, just be yourself. Go do what you're good at and stop trying to compete with men, whether it be a movement, a sport, a job, home life, relationships. Just don't do it.
I totally agree. It's like that anti-abortion movement, my body, my choice. You see women in those movements, and you wonder who in their right mind would impregnate them. Modern women are going through the phases of a man's life because they've wanted to be like men. And when I say phases, every man knows he has to improve himself to get a good woman, from working to improving his physique, because a man is expected to bring something to the table. Now that men have moved on from women, women are going through their phase of having to pursue men. Those who can't get one enter a sort of denial because they don't have partners. Just look, it's always women now wanting to compete in everything we do, because this movement is just a variation of MGTOW or red pill, but for women, it's just another phase of men's lives. The problem is that men adapt faster than women. We play at their same level. They wanted to travel the world. We didn't renew our passports, bro. The girls are strong and independent. We're red pill. Single women are the happiest in the world. Men continue on their path with MGTOW. Now there's the 4B movement. But don't worry, we have the soft guy, the drizzle. It will keep appearing more because in their own game, men always win.
Imagine if men got on this app and said, oh yeah, we're going to participate in the 4Bs.
If us men were to sit here and create a movement where we wanted to no longer center women and we wanted to keep to ourselves and stay far away from them as possible, I think that they would absolutely love that. I think if every woman on the planet had the choice to be a lesbian, they would absolutely take it. I ain't trying to sound like no simp or nothing, but bro, us as men, we suck. We're their number one unaliver by a mile, bro. Like, the vast majority of us are extremely dangerous to them. And they have a right to feel how they want to feel. And all they're saying is they just don't want to center us anymore. You know what I mean? If you really that guy, earn them. I mean, what's the problem? I mean, you ain't got no riz, you ain't got no game. I mean, are you a terrible person? If that's not you, then why are you getting so uptight about this movement? You want to change their minds, earn them back. They're just letting you know that us men ain't the only ones with all this power. They got the keys now. And without them, civilization doesn't move, bro. They're demanding their respect, deservingly so. So how about we give it to them, earn them back, so we can get this ish back on the roll. If not, they're out of here, buddy. And that's not on them, that's on us. Respectfully.
Personally, as a man, I don't support all movements. I don't have the belief that all women are bad, just like not all men are bad either. But absolving one group of responsibility and saying that only men need to change, brother, that's also wrong. Because we don't take to the streets with signs to assert our rights. The most we do is make a TikTok video talking about something that bothers us. If not, DNA tests would be mandatory. Women change laws in their favor, and they usually get their way, from divorces, child custody and support, pregnancy, to labor regulations that favor their collective. So, saying that all girls would be happy never having a man in their lives is a fallacy. No matter how much they want their Barbie world, men are the ones who keep the global economy ticking in all countries. And of course, if a woman's life is super important, so is a man's. I agree that some men need to make an effort to learn the game and not let themselves be manipulated. But some women should also change their attitudes toward their men, be kinder partners. There's no yin without yang. It's that simple. That's why on this channel, I tell men that the best investment will always be in yourself, because that will make you the best option for a feminine woman who respects you. Because as a man, you are also valuable.
Korean women have no idea what the 4B movement is, and we need to stop this misinformation.
Okay, so thank you to my friend Annie for making that video, because I am a Korean woman currently living in Korea and I have so much to say about this topic. So most of the 4B movement videos that I've seen on TikTok are made from foreigners, and I think Korean Americans or just Asian people living in the West, but not actually people living in Korea. So like I said, I live in Seoul. What I think is happening is the Western media likes to really pick up on these sensationalist, provocative topics and then makes it into an article, and then everyone on TikTok follows suit and makes videos about it. But let me tell you, I am 29, going to turn 30 this year, and literally all the conversations that I have with my friends around my age is about, oh my god, we're looking to get married, we need to find good partners, and we need to do this before it gets too late or we're just like aged out of their marriage market, you know? And I just made a YouTube video about this, Korea's population crisis, why nobody's getting married or having babies. But I also explained there are services in Korea like marriage matchmaking services where people go and you pay a broker and you submit all this information about yourself, your income, your assets, your family background, if you have any debt, like which university you went to, you submit all that information, and then they take that and then they will try to match you up with people who they think that you're on par with. So you know how you see in K-dramas how like the poor girl ends up marrying the richest CEO of Korea? Yeah, in reality that never happens. So people go to these marriage services and they're heavily used. There are literally so many in the country because everyone is using them. And so the 4B movement in Korea is a very, very small fraction of the whole Korean population in general. It's just the Western media likes to highlight that part and make it seem like it's the biggest issue in Korea, which it really is not. I can promise you that. Don't believe all those sensational articles written online all the time. Most people in Korea still like the other sex, we want to date, we want to find love, we want to get married. Those are like the big majority. And it's only the small group of extreme radical misandrists and extreme radical misogynists. They just seem like the loudest because the most attention goes to them. But yeah, I literally just dropped a YouTube video explaining about this whole thing. So go watch it, Anna Lee on YouTube.
See why I tell you women say one thing and do the opposite. That movement wants to change some things in Korea, but what they fight for there is totally different from the narrative that the pink-haired movement in the West wants to sell. Even though women write articles saying that single women are the happiest, at the end of the day, you can't leave behind your instincts. Like a man, no matter how much he wants to, he can't stop desiring a woman. The same thing happens with women. They want to push their agenda of loneliness by trying to hit men. But in the end, they're the ones who end up suffering, as we saw in videos of women regretting feminism. Women asking themselves why they're single, strong, and independent women who followed the corporate path regret their decision. Women can't escape their desire to have a family, and the idea of a dating agency is brilliant. Seeking potential partners, I bet it would start to be a business here, and women would be the first ones willing to pay the fee.
If you don't start to comply, we will start selling you on the market like cattle. We have all the guns, don't forget that. Okay, I know that guys are inherently slower than women are. I mean, sorry, but it is what it is, okay? So I'm going to help you out here. What you don't comprehend is that women have been living in fear of men from birth. Okay, so these threats, this means absolutely nothing to me, okay? What's happening is you're angry because you're lonely. Things are not going the way you thought they would. You thought it would just be easy for you and you would coast through life and get everything you want. And that's not happening. That's not happening. And where you are is at a fork in the road, guys, okay? So you have two choices. A, you can continue down the path that you're on and behaving the way that you do, and then you will legit die alone, okay? Your biggest fear, you will die alone, okay? Nobody will be by your side. Or the option I recommend is to go to therapy, work on yourself, become better human beings, and then hope like a woman picks you one day, okay? Because the tables have turned. You don't understand that we do not need you anymore. We do not care. You serve very little purpose, okay? You're not providers. You're certainly not protectors. I mean, you're making threats against us right there. So you can't protect us. You're a threat to us. And you're not providing anything financially or otherwise. You're not even nice. You guys are at a fork in the road. Choose wisely, okay? May the odds forever be in your favor. Good luck. Good luck.
The female logic is somewhat twisted because if a man ends up alone for not having a woman, it's not the same as a woman not having a man. Because if there are more women than men, let's say there are 20% of single men, that equals 25% of single women, because there are more women than men, and there can't be more of one and less of the other, according to my math. Now, a piece of advice for every man. Don't go threatening a woman just because she doesn't want to be with you. That's stupid. It makes you look needy, and it can get you into legal trouble. Don't do that. I always advise working on yourself. Gym, good nutrition, getting your finances in order, learning skills to help you earn more money, finding a style of clothing that suits you, then hiring a photographer to take good photos of you in different styles of clothing. All of that, brothers, adds points. I assure you, it will bring you the woman you like because it makes you a high-value man. Now, this woman doesn't say that many women will also end up alone if they don't change, that men won't accept certain attitudes, that they're famous unrealistic standards. Well, men are over it. And here's another fact. There are more women than men in this country. A man can easily leave the country and marry a woman from another nationality. Brothers, if you do the work and invest in yourself, believe me, you'll never end up alone.
I would never take his last name. I would use my maiden name. So you'd use your father?
I've been writing about feminism for 20 years, and this still remains one of the top issues that gets people so upset, so pressed. They get like really riled up about this. The video I stitched is actually a really good response to this argument. The name you grew up with is your name. Like, that is part of your identity. It's yours. And I think people really need to ask, Why are so many people jumping through hoops to pretend as if this is not sexist? It is incredibly sexist, like very explicitly so. Now, that doesn't mean you're a bad feminist, right? Like, we all make different negotiations in a patriarchal world. That's fine. But let's not pretend that this is not really, really explicitly sexist. And if it was no big deal, and if it's just tradition, if it's like you want one family name, why don't men do it?
The man's job is to strike out on his own and go build his own family. That's why he has his own last name. And a woman is looking for somebody to join. That's usually how it is. But society has turned you against that very nature in and of yourself to say, well, I want to go build my own name. Okay, fine. Are you strong enough to do so? Yes, I am. And you start listing off the things that you can do. I can call a plumber. I can call somebody to build my house. I can call somebody to do this and do that. A donor bank to have a child. All these other things that are connected to classically and traditionally a man. And you really, at some point in time, are not going to do them without a man. The reason you're sitting up here talking all this trash and saying what you will and won't take is because the world has provided you a safe enough place and a safe enough space to sit up in here and talk the trash that you talk. Not saying that there's no struggles or any danger for you and the gender that you're a part of, but you're safe enough to be able to run in, lock the door, and say, now what? Now what? I'm saying X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to be part of it because you're behind a closed, locked, bolted door built by a man. And you can go out every day knowing that you have the protection of law enforcement, which is, I think, statistically speaking, made up of men. And so when you join a man's team, you're saying, I want you to lead. Okay, since I'm the leader, we take on my name. What's your team name going to be? We'll be the Johnson Smiths. Stupid. It would be like the Liberty, or let me say that the Cowboys. That's my team. The Dallas Cowboys, although they should probably change their name. It'd be like the Cowboys saying, oh, we'll be the Cowboy Ranchers. The what? That's stupid. You get laughed out of the league. What do you want your name to be? Oh, just the Cowboys. Which one? The Cowboys or the Ranchers? So we can identify you. What do you want your first name to be? Okay, let's talk about a city. Dallas Cowboys. We'll be the Dallas Cowboys. It's one singular focus, one singular meaning, one singular push. And that's the problem with feminism infiltrating the home, infiltrating the family, because you're pulling one way, he's pulling another way. And now you're thinking it's going to work. And you're wondering why after 2-3 months, 2-3 years, you're getting divorced because you was pulling that way when you got in the relationship. And you wonder why he didn't want to lead you. Is because he was tired of pulling against you. You're not cooperative. Anyways, before I start cooking these people and saying something I shouldn't be saying, you guys think that you have all of the answers. Men don't, but that's why you work together. But you modern women don't want to work with no men. And you don't want to expressly say that. Oh, I'm not willing to work with a man, but I want a man to do this. No.
Here's your response. What is the real benefit for the man in marriage? In almost 95% of divorces, the man loses everything, including custody of the children. The only benefit, at least on paper, is having your surname in the family. So when you talk about your family in a public place or legal document, it will be Mr. Castillo and Mrs. Lucero, for example. The children will also carry 2 last names because everything is sexist to not give any benefit to the man. Now, if you're a millionaire, I assure you they'll want your surname because at least it has a renowned name. That's why fewer and fewer men want to get married every day. I don't know what man would truly accept this because your father gives you your surname, which will be passed down through generations to his family. Why on earth would I continue passing on another man's surname in my family when he's already formed his own? Why does he still have influence on mine? Also, How will our children have two different surnames, especially the male child? Who will carry your surname to your grandchildren? Let me know in the comments what you think about this.
How do you feel about women taking men's last names when they get married?
No. We do not live in a patriarchy. I think that's extinct and it should not be a thing anymore. I definitely think it's the woman's choice.
Don't do it. You're gonna divorce him.
I feel like that's a personal.
Feels like it's going.
Although
I just talked to somebody yesterday about this who was like, my last name is really boring, and so I want to lose it.
I don't think it should be really like a norm.
I would keep mine. I think, but like keep my husband's too. In my culture, the women don't take men's last names. So yeah, it's definitely just a choice.
Will not marry a girl if she doesn't take my last name.
Would you hyphenate?
No. Hold on. I know. Here's it's the smallest sign of showing your child or children that you're not completely on the same page. You can't agree to just one name for your family. So instead, you're trying to do both parts instead of unifying as one name. Women get the fancy ring. They get most of the input on the marriage. I feel like the name is not a bad trade-off. Yeah. That's my thought.
What's the benefit for the man at all? She takes everything. Unless she's willing to sign a prenup before marriage to keep her surname, then we wouldn't have a problem at least gaining something. But she doesn't want to lose anything. So what do you gain? Also, why get married if you don't want to be part of this man's family? I understand that if you divorce, you can go back to your maiden name, but if you got married, it's to become one. So why don't you want to be Mrs. Castillo? That's how it would be presented, Mr. and Mrs. Castillo, for example. Every day, men's rights are diminishing. Men these days are afraid to say important things. Do you think someone like Trump, Obama, Ford, Rockefeller, those men who have achieved something in life, their wives wouldn't support them? Do you think they would accept their surname being put on the back burner? Women don't understand that a man's surname is his legacy. Once it's tarnished, what's left?
Did you guys know that in Islam, women are not required to take the names of their husbands? In the West and cultures around the world, women continue to take the last names of their husbands without really knowing where this tradition originates from. So the tradition of taking the husband's last name after marriage comes from a deeply patriarchal society where women would essentially become the husband's property after marriage. So husbands would have complete control over their wives legally, financially, and women wouldn't even have rights over their own children. Now, in Islam, women were given rights to ownership, inheritance, financial independence, individual sovereignty, all without marriage or ownership of a husband, and they were not considered as property. Today, many women around the world still practice the tradition of taking their husband's last name, but I find it interesting how many women don't know where this tradition originates from. And that includes myself. Up until 3 years ago, before I started studying Islam, I never really thought about it or knew where this tradition came from. And I find it so interesting and comical almost how Western women view Muslim women through like this lens of like they're victims and they're oppressed. Meanwhile, Muslim women in Islam were given rights almost 1,300 years before women in the West. So next time, before you view Muslim women as victims or oppressed, you should probably study the religion and learn about the rights that Islam gave to us long before you.
According to what she says, it's better not to take the man's surname. But you know what's practiced more in Islam. First, if a woman divorces, she must provide strong evidence for why she's divorcing. Second, there's only a 3-month maintenance period after which she's on her own. Third, the woman has rights to the children when they're young. Only at a certain age does the father also have custody rights. Fourth, and perhaps the most beautiful aspect of all, asset division doesn't exist in some Islamic countries. In others, it depends on jurisdiction, which usually isn't towards the man. Unlike in the West where they'll take everything they can and make you pay alimony. If what marriage in the West offered me was like this, along with a devout wife who rarely divorces because divorce rates are the lowest in the world, then I wouldn't mind if you didn't take my surname. But if you don't offer me these privileges, not even a prenup, then where do I gain in marrying you? Don't you think so, brothers?
I was watching a TikTok earlier and the lady, her stitches were turned off. If you happen to see it, please tag her. But she was basically putting a question out, why in 2023 are women still trying to take their husband's name? I'm going to come at this from a completely different angle. Where I live, actually, we're not allowed to change our names. Or if you did want to change your name, it's a lengthy, almost impossible process. When I got married, there was no one taking anyone's name. So the only one who has my husband's family name is my daughter. If I could, I would have taken his name. I would have taken anyone's name. Okay, maybe not anyone. And the reason I say this is because I have obviously my father's last name, but he has never been in my life, ever. And I remember in my teens, I was inquiring of how I can change my name to my mom's last name because, again, I have, at least growing up, really, I don't have a connection to that side of my family. Now, after, bumping into siblings and being able to meet more family randomly with no help to him, is how I was able to piece together kind of my dad's side. And ultimately, I remember clearly thinking that, I want to change my name. I don't know why I have this person's last name because I don't feel a connection. And then now when I got married, I remember the pastor was telling us that, listen, if you did want to take your husband's last name, you can go into the neighboring province, Ontario, and have just the ceremony at the court or whatever it is, and then come back and do everything here if you really did want to take his name. And I remember at that point very clearly being like, is this something I really want? I remember entertaining my husband was like, it's not that serious. And I was like, for you, ultimately now it is what it is. But, not that I feel left out, but I just feel like I don't match because my husband and my daughter, they both have the same last name. Like if we're traveling in our passports, I know it's not that serious, but, listen, do whatever it is that you want to do. But like I said, coming at this from a different perspective, that I would gladly have taken his name. And he has a beautiful last name too.
Absolutely, because it's not a family. It's two separate people living together. For that, it's better to just live together without getting married. What's the point of marrying if we won't even have the same surname, which doesn't allow us to be called Mr. and Mrs. whatever the surname is? Also, when my children with my surname are called and you show up with another name, what will you say? This is why I say men these days don't want to get married. When you take away all the privileges that make marriage beautiful for him, let's be honest, if I don't marry you, I'll still sleep with you, we'll still live together, we'll still have children, and I'll be more protected in case you come after my assets and my children will have my surname. But she doesn't want to lose anything or sacrifice anything ever. That's why I say the only one who marries for love is the man. The woman marries for a lifestyle. She'll win at everything. In the end, you feel like a man that she was never really yours. She just sold you a dream, a moment in her presence, and that your marriage was a sham because you weren't even legally married in front of society. Let's watch the other video. I'll explain it better there.
One of my biggest regrets, and one that I'm still living with the implications of today, is taking my ex-husband's last name. Now bear with me because it's not fun to talk about things not working out possibly. But with these traditions that we're carrying on into our lives, this one life that we have to live, we need to be so intentional and think about the origins and what they truly mean. What are we taking part of? Just because it's the norm doesn't mean that it's right or that it's something that we should do. And I wish I had that mentality when I was 19 and I got married, but I didn't. I was a young little girl in love. I took his last name. I felt like part of my identity was lost. I grieved it, but I did it anyway because it was right. It was what I was supposed to do in order to be a family. I had kids, 3 kids, gave them his last name because he needed to carry on his legacy or whatever. The problem was 15 years later when I wanted a divorce, and it hit me like a freight train that if I wanted to change my name back to my maiden name, my true identity, the only name that I really felt like was me, because guess what? It was me. I was now going to not have the same last name as my kids. Now here's the kicker. When I talk, I hate saying that. I say that all the time. Here's the kicker. Whatever. I don't know why I say that. I only say that in videos, I think. Here's the thing. When I talk to women all the time about the possibility of keeping their maiden name, the first thing they always say to me is, well, no, I don't want to change. I don't want to keep my maiden name because then I won't have the same last name as my kids. I think to myself, how conditioned are we? We don't even think of another possible scenario. Like the kids take our last name. Heaven forbid, we give birth to these children. We grow them inside of us. We feed them off of our bodies. We put a lot into bringing these people into the world, but it's not even a part of a possibility for them to have our last name. I really hope that changes in the future. I feel like Gen Z is so much more intentional with these things. So I have hope for the future, but let me give you 2 possible scenarios that could go wrong if you choose to give up those rights and give your husband's name to your children. One possibility is that he gets remarried again. I was sitting in court I hear the judge say the new Mrs. and his last name, and I realized, holy cow. Now, if I change my last name back to my maiden name, the kids are going to share a last name with her and him, and they will look like a family unit. Yeah, that's one possible scenario. Second possible scenario is that we all keep the same last name. So now he has 2 wives with the same last name. Even one's an ex, but we all are sharing the same last name. That's not very comfortable either. And then the third scenario is, and the only possible way to truly secure that you continue having the name as your kids, the same name as your kids, is to give them your last name from the beginning. And if your husband wants to be a part of that family unit, and it's really important to him to share the same last name, then he can take your last name. I know, so out in left field, right? Crazy. What is she thinking? But think about where these traditions are stemming from and why not. And on the other side, I don't believe you have to share the same last name to be a family unit. I currently have my maiden name. I'm married to a man who has his maiden name, and the kids have their dad's last name. We're a happy family.
Exactly, stupid. They take on whose last name? The man. The who? The man. Dummy. Acting stupid. You just said all that stuff. He's got something on this. He's got a lot of trouble on his hands. I'll tell you that right now. You know what? You can have your little stupid last name as long as you're not kicking up dust and confusing the children. You can have your little stupid videos that you got going on out here as long as you're not bringing that nonsense in the house. I'm empowered. I'm this. I'm that. Scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, all scenarios that you pointed out were stupid. We're a family. You women, modern women spend most of their days chilling out, maxing, all cool. Just kidding. They spend most of their days thinking of how to sabotage themselves. And this is just another way to do so. This is literally just another way to do so. And then when the man doesn't want to provide, you know, these little things, it's like they don't get it. Socially inept. These little things that you're doing can make a man feel a certain way. The little things that he does to oh, well, you just did this and you didn't know that it made me feel a certain way, but it actually did. It's making them feel less than. Like, man, come on, man. It's like, that's the thing. You get some traditions. There's some things that traditionally a man pays on a date. Okay, then, stupid. Traditionally, a woman takes a man's last name. Dummy. Oh, well, traditionally a man gets me a ring and it's her. Traditionally, it's going to be 3 months of his salary. Well, traditionally, stupid, the man is going to lead in the relationship. Now go over there and sit down. Sit down. But they'll never do that because they have too much time on their hands to watch TV, to listen to these shows that plant stupid ideas in their head, to read these books. And then instead of it being a fantasy, they take it as reality and be like, yeah, that really sounds, I really didn't think about that. You didn't think about that. It's because you were working and now you're not busy. You have an idle mind. And what's up with an idle mind? Stupid mind. It becomes a stupid mind. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Until the next video, I'm out.